In the shadowy labyrinth of late 19th century London, a series of macabre discoveries began to unfold along the banks of the River Thames. Between 1887 and 1889, the Victorian public was gripped by a sequence of ghastly crimes, later known as the Thames Torso Murders. Who were the victims? What was the nature of the killings? And more frustratingly, who were the suspects? Join me as I will try and answer here on Kora's investigation. Let's first begin with the victims of the Thames Torso Murders. The Thames Torso Murders, spanning from 1887 to 1889, involved the discovery of dismembered human remains across various locations in London, particularly along the River Thames, hence the name of the murders. The identity of most victims remains unknown, and the scattered nature of their remains compounded the mystery. Here is a look into the victims. The first victim is the Rainham mystery. Discovery was initially found on May 11, 1887, where dock workers near the River Thames in Rainham uncovered a female torso wrapped in cloth floating in the river. Over the following weeks, additional body parts were found. First, on May 18th, a right arm was retrieved from the river. On June 4th, a left leg was discovered, and on June 9th, a right foot surfaced. The details are as follows. The body condition. The torso and limbs were decapitated and dismembered with notable precision, suggesting anatomical knowledge. The age and identity of the victim was estimated to be between 30 to 40 years old. The exact identity remains unknown due to the decompensation and lack of head or identifiable features of the body. The forensic observations concluded that the careful dismemberment pointed towards a person skilled in anatomy or surgery, heightening the intrigue surrounding the case. Victim 2, the Whitehall mystery. The initial find was on September 11th, 1888. Construction workers building the new Scotland Yard headquarters found a decomposed female torso in a cellar vault. Other subsequent finds discovered that a week later, on September 17th, a left leg of the same victim was unearthed in a nearby location, buried under rubble. And the final find of the Whitehall mystery, the victim's right arm was found buried in a grave, discovered months later in October. Also, like the previous victim, here are the details. The body condition. The torso was missing its head and limbs, consistent with the dismemberment, but showed no signs of additional floating parts in the river, unlike the Rainham case. The age and identity. The woman was believed to be 24 years old. The remains were too decomposed to provide positive identification, and no head was ever found to facilitate identification. The forensic observations concluded that the body parts were severed with skill, hinting at an individual with medical and anatomical expertise like the previous victim. The deliberate burial of parts at the construction site suggested an attempt to conceal the crime carefully. Victim 3, the Pinchin Street torso. The initial find was on September 10th, 1889, of a torso of a woman wrapped in cloth was discovered under a railway arch in Pinchin Street, Whitechapel. Subsequent finds, unlike the previous cases, no additional body parts were found nearby or in the Thames. The body condition. The torso was decapitated and missing limbs, but notably lacked the meticulous wrapping and strategic disposal seen in the previous cases. Age and identity. The victim was estimated to be between 30 and 40 years old. The absence of a head and limbs again made the identification impossible. Forensic observations concluded that the location and the condition of the body suggested a hasty disposal. The lack of precision in the wrapping and the absence of other body parts implied of a possible deviation from earlier patterns or a different intent by the murderer. The fourth and final victim, victim 4, the Elizabeth Jackson case. Starting on June 4th, 1889, various body parts began surfacing in the Thames, stretching from Battersea to Limehouse. June 4th, a torso was discovered near Battersea. June 5th, an arm was found floating in the river near Limehouse. And other subsequent finds over the several days, additional body parts, including legs and other limbs, were retrieved from different points along the River Thames. Body condition. The dismemberment showed less precision compared to earlier cases like victim 1 and 2, including a possible different method or even a different murderer. Age and identity. Unlike the previous victims, this one was easily discovered to be of Elizabeth Jackson, a 24-year-old prostitute, through the recognition of specific scars and marks from acquaintances. Forensic observations concluded that Jackson's case differed notably in the extended time frame and less skilled dismemberment. The identification of Jackson added a human face to the victim pool, but lack of precision raised questions about the killer's consistency or intent. Now let's look at the nature of the killings. First, let's check at the modus operandi. The primary characteristic of these murders was the dismemberment of the victims. The level of precision varied, but generally indicated significant anatomical knowledge. The killer disposed of the body in the Thames and other locations, suggesting an attempt to hide the identity of the victims and hinder police investigations. The victim profile suggests that all the victims were female, often young adults. The occupation of these victims is not known because only one victim has been identified, and that was Elizabeth Jackson, and she was a prostitute. So we can't say for sure if he only targeted prostitutes. And because of the nature of these killings, investigators had a big problem solving this case, primarily due to the identification, because the dismemberment and disposal of body parts in the Thames made it difficult to identify the victims and understand the full extent of the crimes. Investigators also couldn't go to the media or public and ask for any clues, because at the same time the Jack the Ripper killings were happening, and that garnered major media attention, possibly overshadowing this case. And also there were forensic limitations because it was the Victorian era, but that wasn't necessarily their fault. Now, let's get into the suspects. First, Frederick Deeming. Frederick Deeming was an English-born criminal known for his violent crimes, including murder of his own wife and children. His relevance to the case is because Deeming was considered a suspect in both Jack the Ripper and the Thames Torso Murders due to the history of brutal violence and his presence in London during the relevant time frame. Notable facts of Deeming: the murder of his family. Deeming murdered his first wife and 4 children in Rainhill, England, before moving to Australia, where he killed his second wife. The timing: Deeming was in England during the time of the Thames Torso Murders, 1887 to 1889, and the Jack the Ripper murders. His behavior and background suggest he was known for his deceitful and violent nature. Deeming often used many aliases and moved frequently, which complicated tracking his movements and potential involvement in various crimes. His link to the murders suggests, despite the suspicion, there was no concrete evidence linking Deeming directly to the Thames Torso Murders. His known crimes involved different methods, primarily strangulation and bludgeoning, rather than precise dismemberment seen in the torso cases. However, his violent tendencies and presence in London during the murders kept him under consideration as a potential suspect. Our second suspect is Dr. Thomas Neil Cream. Dr. Cream was a Scottish-Canadian physician, notorious for his career as a serial killer, often dubbed as the Lambeth Poisoner. His relevance to the case is that Cream was considered a suspect in the Thames Torso Murders and also the Jack Ripper case due to his medical background, history of violent crimes, and his presence in London during the period of the murders. Notable facts about Dr. Cream. Cream was convicted of multiple murders involving poisoning of his victims, primarily targeting women in Canada, the United States, and England. He is a trained physician. Cream possessed the anatomical knowledge and access to substances that could facilitate the precise dismemberments observed in the torso murders. Cream was in London during the 1880s and early 1890s, overlapping the time frame of the Thames Torso Murders and the Jack the Ripper killings. While Cream's medical expertise and violent history made him a suspect, the methods he used to kill, which is primarily poisoning, differed significantly from the dismemberment seen in the Torso Murders. Furthermore, there was no direct evidence linking him to the specific crimes. His arrest and subsequent execution in 1892 for the poisoning did not provide conclusive proof of his involvement in the Thames Torso Murders. However, his profile as a medical knowledgeable killer kept him on a list of potential suspects. Number 3. Francis Tumblety. Francis Tumblety was an American quack doctor and self-proclaimed physician, known for his eccentric personality and dubious medical practices. Tumblety became a suspect in the Thames Torso Murders and the Jack the Ripper case due to his anatomical interest, questionable activities in London, and the timing of his presence during the murders. Here are some notable facts about Mr. Tumblety. Tumblety reportedly had a macabre fascination with collecting female reproductive organs, which aligned disturbingly with the anatomical precision seen in the torso dismemberments. He was in London during the Thames Torso Murders and the Jack the Ripper killings, placing him near the scenes of the crimes. Tumblety was known for his erratic and eccentric behavior, and he was arrested in London in 1888 for unrelated offences. His sudden flight to the United States following the release raised further suspicion. While Tumblety's interest in anatomy and his presence in London during the murders made him a person of interest, there was no direct evidence connecting him to the Thames Torso Murders. The precise dismemberment suggested the work of someone with more hands-on anatomical or surgical expertise than Tumblety was known to possess. Despite the gaps, his behavior and timing kept him under consideration as a suspect in the gruesome torso case. Number 4. Robert Mann. Robert Mann was a mortuary attendant in Whitechapel, an area closely associated with Jack the Ripper. His role gave him access to corpses' anatomical knowledge, making him a person of interest in the Thames Torso Murders. Mann's professional background and proximity to the crimes placed him under scrutiny. His job involved handling dead bodies, and he would have had necessary anatomical awareness to carry out the precise dismemberment seen in the Torso Murders. Mann exhibited unusual and erratic behavior, which led some to speculate that his involvement in the Ripper murders and, by extension, the Torso Murders. Working in Whitechapel area, Mann was near the epicenter of the Ripper murders and within reach of the locations where the torso remains were discovered. As a mortuary attendant, Mann had both the means and the opportunity to dismember bodies, a critical factor in the suspicion against him. Despite the circumstantial connections, there was no direct evidence linking Mann to the Thames Torso murders. A lack of concrete forensic ties and witness connecting him to the disposal of the murder of the victims left his involvement speculative. His anatomical expertise and suspicious behavior made him a viable suspect, but without definitive proof, his role in the crime remains uncertain. And now we get into the conspiracy theory side of the case. The mad doctor theory. A prevailing theory suggests that a medical professional, possibly a surgeon or someone with anatomical knowledge, could be behind the killings. The precise dismemberment of the bodies indicated a level of skill that might be expected from someone with medical training. The theory posits that the killer may have been conducting macabre experiments or indulging in a twisted fascination of human anatomy. The second and most popular theory is that Jack the Ripper and the Thames Torso Murderer are the same person. Both these killings spanned between 1887 and 1889. Both of these killings had some level of precision to them, and all the victims were female. But personally, I do not believe in this theory. I think there is enough evidence to suggest that these were two very different killers. Although Jack the Ripper killed his victims precisely, the Thames Torso murder cut out body parts, which Jack the Ripper didn't. And also Jack the Ripper wanted the media and everybody to know that he killed these people. The Thames Torso murderer wanted to dispose of the bodies and make sure that nobody knows who killed who and who the victims were. So no, I don't think Jack the Ripper and the Thames Torso murderer are the same person. But yes, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you so much to everybody for joining. This is my second video. Hopefully, this one will be a little bit better than the first one. I had some copyright issues with the first one, so yeah, let's just hope there's not going to be any soon. And also, this is a little bit of a longer video, so yeah. I'm going to try and see in the future if I can maybe do more longer videos, and maybe one day I'll hit that 1 hour mark for a video. We'll see. But thank you so much. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Until the next one, peace and cheers.